another edition of Eye on Education. I'm your host, Ed Lisa. Since last we talked, a lot has transpired, both in the COVID-19 world and the world of academics and athletics, on the high school and collegiate and even professional levels. Today, our guests are the Executive Director and Treasurer of the New Hampshire Interscholastic Athletic Association, no stranger to Nashua, Jeff Collins, and Nashua Athletic Director, Lisa Gingras. Thank you both for taking time out of hectic schedules to be with us on today's program. Jeff, I think we'll start with you because you were the guy that were holding the purse strings, if you will, as schools moved through this COVID-19, starting back in March, when you thought you might be able to get tournament play in. Didn't come to pass. That was lost. Spring was lost. And then you planned for the coming summer. Before we came on the air, before you got this job, you were an assistant at Nashua, then principal at Portsmouth High. And while at Portsmouth, you had the occasion to host the President of the United States, Barack Obama. And I was saying that was probably easier than dealing with COVID.
You're absolutely right, Ed. There's no doubt about that. When the government shows up, it's a little bit easier than dealing with all this. Yeah, it's been I think the term unprecedented has been overused, if you will, throughout this whole endeavor, but clearly, something that we've all been through since whatever it was, the Ides of March 13th or March 15th, has just truly been something that we've never seen the likes of which in our state and across the United States and across the world in our lifetime. So, it's been challenging, certainly, with all of the plans and replanning and looking at different things from all sorts of angles, trying to get the most up-to-date and the current information. But, we're in a place, thankfully, at this point in time where the state is allowing play for competitions, and we're moving forward. So, certainly in this, that much of the heavy lifting has been done by the athletic directors across the state of New Hampshire. People like Lisa and her brethren across the state have done an incredible job of, number one, advocating for the student athletes and their care, trying to get sport up and running once again, for the social emotional benefits that they provide. Having to change schedules and having to look at protocols and procedures within their school and laying these pieces out. None of the jobs that any of us have in public education have been easy. Again, the athletic directors, the heavy lift that they've been doing since the beginning, the principals, the assistant principals, the teachers. It's just been a crazy, crazy summer, and hopefully, I know Nashua, I guess, starts up today with some of their sports. So to bring back a sense of normalcy a little bit is going to be a real positive thing.
Going back to March, how difficult was it for you and the various committees within the NHIA for winter sports? Then we'll move to spring. How difficult a decision was it to make that ultimate decision of canceling all the tournaments?
Yeah, very difficult, to be honest with you. I can remember clear as day. I was at Pinkerton Academy for the Division II girls basketball semifinal games. Dartmouth called us the day before and said we can't have games on campus because of the COVID. Pinkerton stepped up and they said, yeah, we'll host them here. On my driving down from Concord to Derry, I got word that the Ivy League had canceled everything. And by the time I was done with the two games at Pinkerton, driving home, I hear that March Madness has been canceled. So it went from, what's this all about? What's going on? I think we need to be careful, to the next morning. What do? We have hockey games that are going off. We have other basketball games that are going on. The information out there, as it came in, was drips and drabs. What's happening? What's going on? And we just decided it was pertinent to really call a timeout is really what we had to do. I mean, we went from having all fans coming to ice hockey semifinals and championships to, we stayed here until like 9 o'clock the night before putting tickets together, ticket bundles for a couple of tickets per kid and really limiting the crowd size, to that very morning saying, how are we going to really have this event going on? We don't know, the what's going on with this disease and this pandemic. So we decided to call a timeout, hit the pause button until we could really figure out what's going on. Because the last thing we want to do is put kids in danger. We don't want to put adults and parents and grandparents in danger. So we had to call that timeout and try to figure out what's going on. And, kind of the rest is history from there with, flattening the curve, and then, many people getting sick and passing away. It was probably the prudent thing to do, but, it's difficult because it's never happened before.
Obviously, spring was completely out, and then going forward, planning for the fall, as you said earlier, it wasn't until the state gave the okay. But prior to that, take us through the process, if you would, of what you and the committees were doing for a possible and ultimate opening of fall sports.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's working through the process, trying to figure it out, working through with our parent organization, the NFHS. They got on the ball early, came out with some recommendations from their sports medicine committee. Then each of their sports specific committees looked at different rules modifications in light of COVID and what was going on across the United States. Our sports committees then met, had some various discussions about how we're going to modify play, what rules do we need to enact, what is in our wheelhouse to control, what is not. Sitting down with our sports medicine committee and utilizing the state's documents to come up with some guiding practices for all of our member schools. So there was a lot of lifting, including many conversations with our executive council. How are we going to have sport this fall? What are we going to do? How do we encourage more regionalized competition rather than just playing within our own division? So a lot of things, a lot of discussion, a lot of things had to be modified and changed. Again, we were very fortunate here in our state that our governor came out very early, beginning of July, and said, amateur and youth sports are open to be played across the state of New Hampshire. Quite frankly, I was on a executive director call with a number of my colleagues across New England, New York, and New Jersey. Many of them are still waiting for the go-ahead from their governors right now in order to play. I just got word, I believe, one of the northern New England states, they were supposed to start play this week. That's been pushed back another week. Again, having close conversations with the governor's office and working through, all the problems that we need to. But again, that's the same type of thing was going on in each individual school district. And I know Lisa will back me up on it. It's, how do we put the processes and procedures in place to make it safer for kids to return to play and have some of these games moving forward. So our process was very similar to what was going on in every other school district, to be quite frank.
Lisa, unlike many of your contemporaries, you have a couple of high schools that you're dealing with, a couple of teams in each high school that have fall sports. And you work through the winter and the spring. It also caused the postponement twice of the revised and reborn Nashua High Hall of Fame that you worked so hard on. Talk about first preparing, knowing early on that there was good possibility there would be fall sports. What was your process going forward?
So we started, honestly, before even talking about fall, is looking at our summer workouts. The NHIA bylaws permit teams to get together for skills and drills and and conditioning and things like that in the summer. So the first step was going from an abrupt end to winter, no spring, to how do we get our kids back together and on campus. So that was the first step. So a lot of us, worked together and how could we do this safely? And some of our teams, I think we had about 13 programs between the 2 high schools and a couple of middle school programs, worked together over the summer with almost 400 student athletes. So that was the first step to sort of show that we could do it and we could do it safely, that the kids would be social distanced, there'd be sanitizing and things like that. So we did that sort of in 2 phases. One was completely outside. So even our volleyball programs, they ran some sessions outside in the grass. Our basketball programs, some used tennis courts, some used parking lots, some went to area parks that had hoops. So that was the first step to show that, yeah, we can get together, the kids and coaches and parents and everybody can follow the protocols we put in place for those. And then moved forward to, all right, let's open our weight rooms. As you know, that's a big part in all of our athletic programs. So we opened our weight rooms and allowed our volleyball programs into the gyms, and our basketball programs in the summer. Very, very small groups. Throughout the entire summer, they were in groups of 9 with a coach and very strict screenings and things like that. So that was the first step that we needed to take. So once we had that up and running, then we started looking to fall. And it was challenging because, as Jeff mentioned, every school district, every superintendent, and every school board was different. Some schools were right from the beginning, absolutely, we're all in. Other districts were right from the beginning, absolutely, we're not in. And then there was places like Nashua where, okay, let's get the protocols in place, meetings with the superintendent, meetings with public health, meetings with the school board and things like that, to not just can we do this, but here's how we can do it safely. A lot of people keep saying return to normal. This isn't normal. Going to a football game when there's going to be anywhere between 300 and 400 people in the stand instead of maybe a couple of thousand. That's not normal. To be at a football game without our band, that's not normal. But in my opinion, it's the best that we can do under the current circumstances. And it's a lot better than what we had in the spring, which was nothing. It's an opportunity for the kids to get out there and play. So we started working through right from March, division ADs, we were meeting weekly, sometimes twice a week. As a state, the athletic directors were meeting weekly. And then I was also involved in 2 or 3 different weekly meetings at the national level, just, what's going on in California and Georgia and Montana, and kind of was able to pool all of the resources, not just from our division and our state, but from across the country. Wow, I hadn't thought about that, pull that into our protocol. So that was very helpful. Made for a very busy spring and summer trying to pull all of this together. But as Jeff mentioned, we are opening up today. We have field hockey and volleyball going on. As a division, what we decided to do is each week we have a pairing. So this first week, our pairing is north and south. So field hockey, volleyball, soccer, they'll play home 1 game, they'll play away 1 game, and then we'll have 1 football game at the end of the week. So knock on wood, if anything were to happen, then it's 2 schools that are affecting each other, not like a normal day where, South might be playing 5 different teams on Monday and 8 completely different schools and teams on Tuesday. We tried to contain it a little bit. We were very deliberate in the fact that we scheduled everybody's rival the first week. So, if something happens later on and we get shut down or something like that, they were at least able to have their rival game. And a lot of schools are also doing senior nights at their first or second home game. So across the state this week, you've got North-South, you've got Central Memorial, you've got Londonderry, Pinkerton. So we're trying to make sure that some of the things that the kids really lost out in the spring, we're trying to make sure that we have those experiences for them early on in the season.
And as you said, it's not perfect, but it's the best under the current circumstance. And one of the victims was the PreTurkey Bowl Wednesday night game, which will not be played this year. And before we went on, we talked about it. You had good reasoning behind that.
Yeah, there were a few different reasons. One being the biggest thing, obviously, everyone's safety in mind, is that's a game that students who've gone off to college all over the country and in some cases the world come back and want to come to that game. Well, now you're just opening us up to all kinds of potential exposure. And another reason was the fact that that's usually draws a pretty big crowd. A couple of thousand people come to that. And we, as I said, we're only able to have about 400 at a game at Stellos, according to the public health. So it didn't make any sense to delay the season until Thanksgiving when we can only allow 400 people into the stadium.
A reduction in the number of games being played in football, reductions in the other sports in the fall as well?
Yes, so season was delayed. So technically field hockey, soccer, volleyball, and cross country were able to open up this past Friday. As a division, we made the conscious decision to start today, have a full week, start with a full week. One, so that we could have that nice pairings with our schools and also in observance of the Jewish holiday Rosh Hashanah over the weekend. We had previously already moved all of our games off of that weekend. So we didn't want to contradict ourselves and say, well, pre-COVID it was important, but now because of COVID, we're going to go ahead and schedule some games. But the schedules worked out nicely. So field hockey has always ended a week before everybody else. So they have a 4-week season, and field hockey, soccer, and volleyball have a 5-week season. We've currently only scheduled 5 football games, even though the corresponding dates from the state say we could have a 6th week, but we've gotten some indication on what football playoffs may look like. So we didn't want to schedule a 6th game not knowing what was going to happen. So we're still waiting to see what all of the different sports committees are going to do in terms of their playoff times and those schedules and things like that. So we're looking at anywhere other than football, 8 to 10 games. And our golf teams have already been playing. I think one school has 3 matches under their belt and the other school has 2 matches under their belt already. So yeah, so field hockey, soccer, volleyball will have 8 to 10 games. Cross country, we're doing meets. Some weeks it's Tuesdays and Saturdays. Other weeks it's only one of those 2 dates. And then football right now, we currently have a 5-game schedule.
Which brings us back to Jeff and the NHIA. Have you finalized a plan for what the postseason might look like, and specifically football for the playoffs and championships?
Sure, and we're still working on those pieces as we speak. The delay in the season, getting back to Lisa's point regarding the delay, our season was set to begin, sports seasons were set to begin prior to many schools being able to truly vet and have meaningful dialogue about what returning to learn was going to look like. So it was our decision, the council's decision, to delay the start of the season so schools could put the brain power and the thought behind what is it going to look like as we return to learning this fall. And let's push off the decisions around sports so we can have meaningful dialogue about what school is going to look like. Because as you know, school looks different across the entire state of New Hampshire. There are some that are full remote. There are some in various numbers or ways of doing hybrid education. And there are some that are absolutely 100% full in. So it was a conscious decision to put off the season. The other piece to it is, getting to your question about the playoffs, it was also a decision not to extend the seasons. We're very conscious of the fact that much of the data is pointing to a time in which the COVID-19 will still be present, but we'll also have the cold and flu season. So it was a conscious decision not to extend the season on the backside, because we're going to be running up into a time frame where the cold and flu will be will be coming into the mix, as well as the COVID. So we are still devising what some of these are going to look like. We've said it from the outset that we are going to have open tournaments across the state. We are holding to that. open tournament by division is what we're talking about here. Not an open tournament with D1 playing D4 schools, everybody in a big group. No, this is an open tournament by division. We know with some of the with some of the parameters that were put in place with regard to scheduling, there may be some schools that are going to be opting out of some sort of tournament play because of whatever restrictions are in their districts, whether it be a 20-mile radius or a 30-mile radius. So what we're doing as of this moment is trying to plan on tournaments with the maximum amount of teams participating in those tournaments and with the parameters that we currently have in place with the end of the season. So in some sports like volleyball or soccer, we may have to adjust the tournament dates to get another round in, to get an additional round in a sport like soccer and field hockey and volleyball, where you can play a couple of games in a week. That's not a real large issue. But you take a sport like football where you're only playing one game a week, you can't extend the season. We have to have some dialogue about that last week, as Lisa was talking about, that 6th week of the season, whether or not we need to utilize that date to have a playing game for a 6 and 7 team to have a first playing game while everybody else is playing a regular season contest. So we're still trying to play around with the numbers and take a look at that. What we hope to do is have schools declare somewhere about 2 weeks prior to the end of the season, declare their eligibility for the tournament, whether or not they would be able to host a home of the higher seed games. Many of our neutral sites, colleges and universities, are closed down to us. We are not able to go there for championship games or semifinal games because they're not allowing anybody from the outside onto their college campus. So we're really looking at home of the higher seed. And again, making it a choice of the individual school whether or not they would like to declare themselves eligible to play in the tournament at the end of the year. So it's a variable. It's kind of a moving target, if you will, at this point in time. But all we can do at this point in time is really take a look at what are the maximum number of teams that are competing. How do we create a playoff system and play dates to allow for that open tournament concept to be implemented with the same championship dates and weekends that we've always had. So that is much of the heavy lifting that we are looking at this point in time. We have some things in the works. Again, it's all going to be dependent upon how many schools declare themselves eligible for these tournament formats. Again, one of the major factors will be whether or not schools will be able to travel and compete in these games when some divisions have put in some pretty strict travel restrictions upon their teams. So we'll just have to wait and see, put it together, and then we'll move forward. As Lisa said, nothing's normal this time of year. This is kind of uncharted waters. I was a teacher before this, as you know very well, and I don't like this kind of uncertainty in the variables that are out there, but it's what we have to deal with now. So I think if anything, this is teaching us all a little bit to be a little bit more flexible, and the flexibility is key as we process and move forward over the next couple of weeks.
And hopefully everyone will understand it's not normal. By human nature, you're just not going to be able to please everybody or do what everybody thinks you should be doing in terms of who plays, who doesn't play, why they don't play. But the number one, health and safety of the student athletes and those associated with the different sports is going to be first and foremost on everyone's mind. And as I mentioned too at the start, Lisa, you had to postpone the Hall of Fame induction twice, and hopefully
Yes.
The third time is a charm.
Ed, I certainly hope so. Obviously when we initially were closed for school for a week, and then that weekend the governor closed us down for 3 weeks, kind of put the thought in our head we were going to have to postpone. And then when it came out that we were closed for another 3 weeks, and at that point coming back, the Monday leading into the original date of May 9th, we we knew we had to postpone. Obviously, with the uncertainty that Jeff was talking about, there was no way we could have a gathering and appropriately honor our 11 inductees. So we postponed. We were optimistic that we would be able to have it in October. We had shot for the end of October, but then as the summer progressed, we knew school was coming back remote. We weren't 100% sure what was going to be happening with the hybrid situation at that point. We just didn't feel it was appropriate in any way for us to have a Hall of Fame gathering with what we hope to be hundreds of people. So we did postpone one more time. So the class of 2020 will be inducted in May of 2021.
And also, while we're focused today on talking about the fall sports and what took us to this point, there's another season beyond that, and certain target dates are coming in which fall sports can begin practicing and what have you. Are any of those dates going to be impacted? Neither one of you can answer to prepare for winter season for those teams, or are you going to try to run it as close to normal as would be in a normal year?
Well, I'll jump in and then I'll pass it off to you, Jeff, because you probably have more answers than I do. I have answered that question more times than I can even tell you, Ed, in the past couple of weeks. And my answer has been, we need to get through the first week of fall first. But on the heels of that, normally we open registration for winter sports mid-October because some of our winter sports are scheduled to start mid-November. So we're, obviously looking to Jeff and Dave and the committees to give us some guidance, because we're behind the 8 ball already starting to plan for winter because fall was delayed and all the protocols in place. But hopefully what we learn from the fall will help us do winter and fall safely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if Lisa's been asked that question once, I've been asked it about 5 more times. We have the dates. The dates are in our handbook. They're published out there. We haven't changed those dates as of yet. So that's what we're sticking to. Obviously, what this pandemic will look like in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks is anybody's guess. I wish I had a crystal ball. I wish I knew. Will it force us to shift it back a couple of weeks? I don't know. Is the only way I can answer that. I think we need to be cautiously optimistic. We keep the dates that we currently have. Those are our target dates. If it needs to be adjusted and shifted, we do as we did in the fall, and we do so in order to bring about what we all hope is the return of winter sports here in the state of New Hampshire. I can tell you there's concerns, there's certainly concerns expressed about all total indoor sports. What does that look like? How do we do this? There are a lot of concerns around volleyball. I think volleyball is a great example how you can actually have an indoor sport in the fall, and we'll see how that all plays out and how that works. And those are things to build upon. But again, what is school going to look like? Where are schools going to be come November, come the week after Thanksgiving, where everybody goes home and they go, to various places? Will we see more schools out on remote education? Will it be coming back full steam? We don't know. I have to also tell you, I know we're speaking to a Nashua audience in the southern part of the state. The northern part of the state is completely different than, the southern part of the state, or the either the seacoast or the Monadnock region. The northern part of the state, they're probably ready to go and on our published first day, but we as a state have to come together. So I wish I could, get right out there, Ed, and tell you that we're starting, the Monday after Thanksgiving, we're ready to go. But plans can change, and that's what we're talking about, the flexibility, and we all have to kind of roll with the punches here a little bit and see where this disease or this COVID-19 pandemic takes us. But again, we have the dates that are out there. We're looking at those dates, and we'll see where we go from here.
Well, obviously, you and your committees are on top of this and have been since day one. And as I said earlier, you can't please everybody, but you're doing the best you can, and health and safety of the student athlete is what's number one and what counts. Lisa, I had the opportunity to watch your presentation at the Nashua Board of Education, and the student athletes in Nashua should be very thankful to you. You made a very well presented plan and outlined what the procedures would be, and you were a great advocate for the student athletes in Nashua. So you are to be congratulated, as are you, Jeff, for all the work that you and the staffs have done up there in Concord. And thank you both for being with us today on Eye on Education.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Ed. Good to see you
You've been
again.
watching Eye on Education, and our guests today have been Jeff Collins, the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Interscholastic Athletic Association, and Nashua High Athletic Director Lisa Gingras. Thank you for watching. Be safe, and we'll see you next time.